G'day everyone and welcome to my recap of the 2023 Classic IPF World Championships. I plan on doing a recap every day essentially after a day's lifting to basically summarize what's going on, give you a bit of context and provide a bit more of an analysis about the actual competition, where the attempts came from, the logic, the rationale behind these, what the coaches were thinking. And yeah, hopefully it's something that you can learn from, but also it's probably going to be a way for you to digest a day's lifting without having to go back and watch the entire live stream, because I've done that for you. So before we get started, apologies for the length. This is probably going to be about 30 to 45 minutes, I imagine. I'm going to leave timestamps in the video description below. So if you just want to skip to the session that's more interesting to you, or that you're more interested in, you can go ahead and do that. So quick backstory: the World Champs are taking place starting today, the 11th of June, in Malta. I think it's the first time it's being held there. And they go for 8 days. So today was day one, Sunday, and they go right until next Sunday. So you can take a look at the schedule. If you want to look at the schedule, you can go here, and it's at ipfmalta.com. So the schedule here, so you know what's going on. Unfortunately, I don't know of a way to see which athletes are in which groups. So you'll see some sessions like here, for example, tomorrow, Monday the 12th, the B group are competing in the morning for the 66s, and then the A group compete in the evening. And I don't know if there's a way to see where each lifter is going to be competing, if they're in the B group or the A group. I don't know if that's even public knowledge, which I think is a little bit odd, admittedly. But you can kind of see here, it starts today the 11th, and it goes all the way to the 18th of June. So today was day one, and as is normal, we start with the lighter classes. So we have the 59 kilo men's, the 47 kilo women's, and the 52 kilo women's. And it is worth noting that this is an open championship, so there's no juniors and masters competitions. So first of all, let's check out the 59 kilo class. That was the first session this morning, and it was, let's check out the nominations. So what each country has nominated for their lifters totals prior to the meet. So the number one nomination is Vasco Carpio. He's from the United States. I don't think he's been lifting very long, maybe only for 2 years, and he's got the biggest total by a significant margin here, 11 kilos. Franklin Leon, he's been competing for, I'm going to say like 20 years, equipped and raw. He's an absolute veteran of the game. Wei Shi Sang, Antoine Garcia, you can see the lists below. So I'm primarily going to be focusing on the top lifters here. So let's jump into the actual lifting, and I'm going to give you guys a bit of a summary as to what went down. So a bit of backstory, a bit of background, I should say. The 59 kilo world record total is 669.5 kilos. And in order to qualify for Sheffield, which is a very important aspect of this World Championships, which is going to it's going to have a very strong role in the attempt selection and a number of other things. In order to qualify for the Sheffield Championships, which is the biggest meet on the calendar, I would say, lifters need to total 95% of the current world record. And so that's going to be a goal for a lot of lifters, is to hit that 95% of the world record total. So in the 59 kilo men's, it's no exception. The world record total is 669.5. And so the qualifying total to get to Sheffield is 637.5 kilos. So keep that in the back of your head as we go on analyzing these. It was an excellent session. We had a junior total world record. We had a masters world record. Yeah, it was a great session. Okay, first thing we're going to look at is Ivan Ivan from Spain. He went 3 out of 3. And he nailed his lifts and squat. And you can check this out. He was nominated in I believe 5th, if you saw. Yeah, nice squat there. And you'll see Antoine also went 3 out of 3. So it was a very strong squat session. All lifters, or all top lifters at least, went 3 out of 3. Antoine Garcia from France hit this really tough squat, 217.5 kilos. Again, 3 out of 3. Franklin Leon, also 3 out of 3. This was a much harder attempt, but he got 222.5. And you can see that was a very shaky lift, and I think he only got 2 white lights from this one. So a very important, I believe 5 kilos up from his second attempt, because that is going to be very important later on in this competition. And this is Vascar from the United States, hitting 222.5 kilos. This is actually 2.5 kilos less than he has already done in training in this prep. So relatively conservative in that sense, but also it very much looked like a limit lift to me. So recapping the squats, you can see that Leon Franklin is the #1 squatter with 222.5, equal with Vascar, but with lighter body weight, so he wins the gold medal. Behind them is Antoine, and then Reggie Ramirez finishes fourth, but he doesn't really play a very strong role in the totals towards the end of the competition. And an interesting thing to note here that I want to mention is that Vaskar and Ivan both weigh 59.00, while Franklin and Antoine both weigh 58.8. So that's also an interesting thing that you're going to notice plays a role later on. The bench was less interesting. You'll see here that Franklin benches 135 and misses a 140 bench. So this was pretty good. They went 5 kilos more, which proved too much. And you got to think, this is a very competitive group. Everyone went 3 to 3, so there's a lot of pressure on the lifters to make lifts. And you'll see just a little bit too heavy for Franklin Leon of Ecuador. While Vasco went 3 to 3 again, so he got 142.5 kilo bench. Similar to the squats, 2.5 below what he's already done in training this prep. Right, that was a really nice lift. And so at the end of the bench press, like I said, bench press wasn't super riveting, I suppose. But just to give you a bit of a summary, Ivan Campana Diaz finished with 130, so he went 3 to 3. So the medals went, Vasco 142.5, Franklin 135, and then Navi of Great Britain 135. And so coming into the deadlifts, the subtotals are 365 for Vasco, 347.5 for Franklin, 345 for Antoine Garcia, and 340 kilos for Ivan. I think you can see that here. Yes, sorry, I should have had this. So these are the subtotals leading up. So you can see Vasco is like well in the lead, and he is a very big deadlifter. So at this point, it was pretty safe to say that he was going to win unless something catastrophic happens, like he only gets one deadlift, like he only gets stuck on his opener. But the fight for second is very much alive. You can see Antoine and Ivan are both on, well, they're on 345 and 340 respectively, but Ivan does have the better deadlift. So going into deads, here we are in the second round. So this is, well, we're already into the third round, but I'll give you a bit of an update as to what happened entering the last round of deadlifts. So Ivan of Spain was on a total of 590, and Antoine Garcia of France and Franklin Leon of Ecuador were on 587.5. Unfortunately, there is no way to see the score sheet live at this time. The score sheets are available in Goodlift, but they're only live at the time, and the final score sheets only get added at the end, and then those score sheets don't actually have the live result as it happens. It just has like the raw sheet. So you're gonna have to follow with me as I go. So to recap, Ivan 590, the Frenchman and the Ecuadorian 587.5, so they're a bit below. Ivan does have the better deadlift. And so the strategy for the Ecuadorian, Franklin, and the Frenchman is to take third attempts that stretch Ivan past his limit. So for example, Franklin has here, this is his third deadlift, 240 kilos. He's jumped 10 kilos. So from a total of 587.5, he's now on 597.5. So he's jumped 10. And because he jumped 10, in order to match that, Ivan is also going to have to jump 10. A similar thing happened with Antoine. Antoine also jumped 12.5 and ended up failing. So when it came around to the Spaniard's third attempt, I suppose what I would call correct load to choose would be a 10 kilo jump. His second attempt was 250. So you'd expect a 10 kilo jump to 260 kilos to take second place off Franklin Leon. But instead, what you're going to see here is an attempt at 262.5, 2.5 kilos more than necessary. And it's a bit of a fight, but he does get it. And Ivan had a wonderful day. He went 9 out of 9 and ended up finishing in silver overall. But you're going to see the score sheet here. Oh, and we're going to jump to the score sheet really quickly, and I'll jump back to that one. Oh, well, Vasco, I'm going to tell you the story of this in a second, but you can kind of see here it makes a little bit more sense. Franklin Leon finishes on 597.5. Ivan ends up winning silver medal by 5 kilo, a 5 kilo margin here. But unnecessarily, Ivan only needed to total 600 to win. And so I spoke briefly with the Spanish coach, Fran Bermejo, and he told me that the reason they went to 262.5 was because that would be a junior European deadlift record, which to me personally doesn't seem like enough of a, motivation to risk a silver medal, because if Ivan missed this, he would have been stuck on a 590 total, he would have come fourth. So an extra 2.5 kilos for a record, which for me is just not a super important thing. I would much prefer a open placing medal. Was very interesting and very, I'm going to say, yeah, risky, I suppose. It obviously paid off because he takes home all the biscuits. Second place. This record, junior deadlift record, European, or whatever it is. And so it kind of works out, but it was a very risky moment because, again, if you just saw the score sheet, you wouldn't know that Ivan's second attempt deadlift was 250 and he jumped 12 when he only needed to jump 10. Now, the final bit I will show you is Vasker's last deadlift. Now, he was well and truly in the lead. He was as far as he needed to go. And this lift of 272.5 kilos was his third deadlift. He'd gone 8 out of 8 at this point. He'd won. He was the last deadlifter. And this deadlift is both 600 pounds, obviously a very big milestone for an American, but it was also to hit that 637.5 kilo total to qualify for Sheffield. And you'll see that he narrowly misses this. And it's a bit of a shame because he has hit this total, the 637.5 in training. Obviously a very different beast, being on the meet, traveling, weight cutting, all that's required. But it is a shame because he hit that total in the gym, not this lift, because he missed 2.5 on squat and bench compared to his training lifts. So yeah, very close to qualifying for Sheffield for Vasker, but he is the world champion, and you can see those final results here. 625, 602, 597 for Leon Franklin, and 587.5 for Antoine Garcia. And so if we pivot back to the nominations, you'll see that the Spaniard was actually nominated in 7th. You'll see that this Chinese Taipei lifter who was nominated in third either heavily underperformed, because I didn't even analyze any of his lifts. He ended up finishing, I forget, 6th or 7th or 8th. Either over-nominated or underperformed. And yeah, while these nominations are a good indicator as to where people are going to finish, things can get shaken quite a lot. Like Franklin Leon ended up finishing 3rd. The Spaniard finished 2nd, so a bit of a shake up there. So that's a 59 kilo class. It was a really good session. Historically, the 59s aren't as competitive as some of the other classes, but it was good to see a really strong fight from 2nd to 4th, essentially. Okay, moving on to the women's. We had the 47 kilo class commencing a little bit after lunch. This was always going to be a very interesting competition. Taking a look at the nominations, obviously all eyes were on Tiffany Chapon, the French woman. She competed at the Sheffield Championships. She's still a junior. Oh, I'm going to jump back here. I apologize, but going back to the men's classes, the 59 class, Franklin Leon broke the world record masters total, which was awesome. And Ivan is still a junior, and so he broke the junior world record total. So we had world record junior, world record masters amongst the open competition, which was awesome to see. Okay, apologies. We're back with the women. So the junior, Tiffany Chapon, with all eyes are on her because she's the world record holder. She's a previous world champion. She competed at Sheffield. She was always going to be the favorite. But the battle for 2nd and even 3rd, which you'll see, ends up being very, very hotly contested. We have Jess Espinal from the United States, Heather Connor, previous world champion, Vicky Kay from Australia, my country, of course, and Aurelie from Canada. So this was shaping up to be a very good battle even before the thing started. Now, again, a bit of background. The world record total is 428.5, which you can see is Tiffany's nomination total, because it is her world record, which she achieved at Sheffield. And to qualify for the Sheffield, the 95% magic number is 407.5 kilos. Okay, going into squats. Let me just check I got this right. Whoopsie, we're gonna try this. All right, going into squats. This was a big surprise. Heather Connor, extraordinarily experienced lifter, takes her opening squat here at 132 kilos. And as you'll see, just straight up misses it. You can see she kind of jumps away here, like hopping and grabbing at her leg. So, speculated maybe it was a bit of a cramp or something going on. Very strange. But, if people miss openers, it tends to be on things like depth or things on, falling over, just like completely losing balance. But that looked like a physical issue, like something was going wrong. And when she came out to do her 2nd attempt at the same weight, it was almost worse. Just hit the bottom, stayed, and just had no power and couldn't even stay with the bar, kind of, again, hopped off the platform. And things were looking really dire. And yeah, I, as well as the whole lifting world who was watching this, was holding their breath as the 3rd attempt came around, because we were like, what is going on? one of the top podium lifters, previous world champion, might bomb out here, and is looking very much the case. In the meantime, Tiffany took 157 on her second attempt, which she nailed. Very smooth attempt, so no issues there. And we come back around into the third round. And so Heather Connor takes her third attempt, 132.5, excuse me. And she somehow finds the strength to plow through that hole and comes up, and it is an awesome lift, and it gets 2 red lights. And I remember watching this because 2 lifts prior to this, I believe, or 3 lifts prior, there was a lifter, the same thing happened. Got 2 reds, and then the jury overturned it. And I think there is something to be said about human psychology and momentum. Because there was already a lift overturned, the jury ended up overturning this lift. And I'm not going to say that they're linked, but I think there is something to be said about momentum and about the way you make decisions. You know, you're already in the mood. You've already established amongst the jury that, yeah, we're in an overturning kind of mood today, which I know sounds weird, and I'm not trying to question the legitimacy of any refereeing or anything, but I definitely think there is something to be said there. And I also think there's something to be said about when a lifter is 2 missed lifts and they're trying to stay in the competition with a third and it's really close, I think there is some level of benefit of the doubt. I know this definitely happens at the local level, although I don't have any statistics to back me up, but I'd be curious to know what the stats are for lifters that have missed both attempts in the opener to get it on the third. I imagine it'll be actually quite high because of things like this where there's a bit of benefit of the doubt. That said, 2 red lights, the jury ended up overturning that lift and she got it. She's in the competition, admittedly only with her opener. So these were the placings at the end of the squats. Unsurprisingly, Tiffany Chapon in first place with 157.5 kilos. She actually missed 160 kilos in her third attempt, which I will say I was a bit surprised that she even bothered to do that. I'm generally of the opinion that a squat jump of 2.5 kilos is just not worth the effort, because for the fatigue of taking that attempt relative to the benefit is very low. Now, for the lightweight women, maybe that's less of a problem. For heavier weights and heavier people, it might become more of a thing. But I specifically remember an experience for me when I was doing the 2015 Oceanias, and my second attempt squat was hard, and coach was like, let's just go up 2.5. I said, we either go up 5 or none at all. Like, I'm not going to go out there for 2.5 kilos. So a bit surprised that Tiffany went out there when she was already the favorite, didn't need that extra 2.5, ended up missing anyway. Yeah, a little bit surprising, but she gets a gold. And you'll see in second place a really interesting result here. It says here, Justine Espinal with 142.5, Ana Lores Fernandez with 142, and Vicky Kay with 142.5. And okay, the lighter lifter in a tie gets the placing. So Jessica and Anna are both lighter than the Australian, and they are above her. But they have the same body weight, and the rules say that the lifter that achieves the lift first, if they're tied on body weight and tied on the lift, the lifter that achieved the lift like first in time chronologically. And funnily enough, Jess has the lower lot number, but Anna lifted first because she did that squat in Group B. There's a Group B and a Group A. Group B compete first. They are generally the lower nominated lifters, and then Group A are the high nominated lifters. So she'd already done her squats. And so this was actually an error that got corrected later. Anna ended up winning the silver medal from Spain, followed by Jess Espinal. So I guess the logic there is like, well, Jess already knows the result. She knows her body weight, so she wanted the silver. She would have had to do 145. Her second was actually 140, and it was pretty good. She probably could have done 145, but I think in hindsight, it was the right choice because 142.5 was quite hard. It was hard enough, I think. At the time, I might have been tempted to take the 5 kilo jump, but the 2.5 ended up proving correct. Okay, going into bench press. The bench press again was fairly straightforward. There wasn't so much unusual, but a couple of things I will comment on. Orally, who is actually the junior, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, is the junior junior champ, and I believe world record in deadlift at least, but maybe total. Takes her opener bench press. She's a fucking weapon of a bench press, by the way. 82.5 kilos, basically close grip, but kind of loses balance. And yeah, ends up getting no lift for this. Of course, it's never good if a lifter misses an opener, especially if they bomb. That's not what we want. But an important point here is that if a lifter bombs a lift, so if they get no lifts across the board, they are ineligible for records in other lifts. So Aurelie is an awesome deadlifter. She, spoiler alert, ends up going for a deadlift world record later. But had she bombed in bench, she would not be eligible for that world record, even if she smokes it. So, good news is she ends up getting it. I believe I've got a video of that in a second, or maybe I don't. No, I don't. She does get her second attempt, it's fine. She even gets 2.5 kilos more on her third. But an interesting thing there because, yeah, generally you don't see misgrooves so much on that kind of style of bench press, like that closer grip, more, I'm going to say like muscly style of bench press. Usually a misgroove happens when you've got a style like Tiffany, where it's very precise and very balanced, and even a small loss in balance can cause you to fail. Okay, this was another interesting point that I was very confused by. If you watched Sheffield last year, was it this year? It was this year. Or if you follow that at all. Sheffield, if you don't know, is the biggest powerlifting competition. It's run by SBD, and I think next year has 430,000 British pounds or 445,000 British pounds up for grabs, right? Ridiculous money, the most money you'll ever see in a powerlifting meet. And the criteria for winning is your total relative to the world record at the time, and you get bonus money if you break any individual lift world records. Now at Sheffield this year, Tiffany failed 99.5 kilo bench press for the world record bench press twice. She missed it on her second and she missed it on her third. And she's come to the World Championships here, and on her second attempt, she's taken this lift, 99.5 kilos. So she broke the world record. And so, congratulations, you broke the world record. But I'd be curious the logic there, because she's going to get invited to Sheffield, I'm going to say 99.9% likely. Wouldn't you want to keep that record as low as you can to make it as easy as possible? It's never easy to break a world record, but to make it as easy as possible to break the world record there and get the money, because there's no money here. There's no money for breaking a world record here, unless there's some sort of government sponsorship or something that I don't know about. But yeah, very interesting, and you'll see this kind of tactics play out a little bit later. If you paid attention, I believe it was last year's World Championships, Taylor Atwood tied the world record total for the same reason, to avoid pushing the world record total up and making his life a little bit easier at the Sheffield. But Tiffany Chapon goes 2 out of 2, breaks the bench world record with 99.5. We have Jess from the United States. She benches 95 and she gets the silver medal. It is an awesome bench press. She takes home silver. And yeah, you can see the results here. Tiffany ends up missing 100.5. So 1 kilo extra, she misses. So you saw that 99.5. It was really good. I was surprised that 1 kilo more pushed her over the edge. But that's what kind of bench press is like at these types of weights and these types of lifters. And so again, a little bit surprised that she pushed that there. Awesome result for Australia. Vicky K with a bronze with 90 kilo bench. And you kind of drop off pretty quickly from there. So yeah, really competitive bench press section. And we come into the deadlifts. Let me just check my notes here and see if I haven't missed anything. Okay. Oh yeah, and a little bit more of a summary there. So Heather Connor goes 2 out of 3 with 75. So she finished, I think, I'm going to say 5th on squats, 6th on bench. So she's well and truly behind. Yeah, Tiffany goes 100.5 and misses. Okay, we get to deadlifts. Heather's obviously not having a good day. She got 1 squat, 2 benches. Their initial deadlift opener of 190 gets dropped to 182.5. Very reasonable. Still, I think the heaviest deadlift of the group, but a very reasonable decision considering your squats didn't go so good. So probably a sign that things aren't going well. She comes out and this is what her opening deadlift looks like. Absolute smoke show. So kind of puts everyone on notice and says, hey, I'm actually feeling pretty good. You all better be careful because I've got a big deadlift in me. And remember, she's previous deadlift world record holder. I don't know if she was current world record deadlift holder before the start of the day. Vicky deadlifts very well, but is the weaker deadlift of the group. And her second attempt is 167.5 kilos. And you can kind of see that, watch that again. It's good, but not amazing in terms of bar speed. There's a few kilos left, but not a whole lot. That was her second attempt of 167. Jess of the United States takes 170 as her second attempt. And you can see, if you compare that bar speed compared to Vicky's, you can see how much stronger that was. That was really, quite a bit left. And this is a really interesting one. And I know I'm watching these lifts quickly because I don't want this to drag on. You can always go back and replay things. But Aurélie Nguyen of Canada takes 177.5 kilos as her second attempt deadlift. Conventional God. Easy. Watch this bar speed. Very, very strong. Happy to see this. Okay, very good. And so we get to the end of... Oh, and then we have Heather Connor, of course, apologies, with 192.5. So she jumped 10 kilos from her opener. Pretty smooth. Watch that one more time. Very smooth second attempt. So she is looking very good. And so this deadlift by Heather wasn't an accident. This was a very deliberate, as in the attempt selection. It wasn't, of course it's not an accident, but it was a well thought out one. But I think the coach of the United States, Ariane, is very experienced, very clever. And so this decision to take 192.5 was deliberately to tie the total with Vicky and with Aurélie, which we're going to see here. You'll notice Heather, Aurelie, and Vicky are all on equal totals, 400. Team Canada deliberately put in 177.5 to match the total of Australia. And Heather Connor, the United States, did the same thing. They picked 192.5 to equal Vicky. And you can see that the placings are in this order because of the body weights. Heather's the lightest, followed by Aurelie, followed by Vicky. And so when you're in this situation coaching for the stronger deadlifter, you basically just have to match the jump. So as in if the Australian jumps 5 and I was a Canadian, I would jump 5. If the Australian jumps 5, the Canadian jumps 5, and I'm the United States, if I'm Heather Connor, I also jump 5. Because you keep the distance. Whatever they jump, you jump, and you just match them and you stay in the lead. This is a fight for bronze medal. Jess has a 7.5 kilo lead. I will briefly mention, you saw that second attempt, it was really good. So fighting for silver isn't necessarily on the cards right now, unless Jess misses her third attempt deadlift, which she doesn't end up doing. And so you got this really interesting battle for third. Vicky fails her third deadlift. You can see this here at 172. So she jumped 5. So she misses this. So she's stuck in 5th essentially. Obviously the person in 6th is too far behind, not going to catch that 50 kilo gap. So it gets to Aurelie. And now Team Canada have to make a choice. Whatever they jump, they know that Heather Connor will jump. If they jump 5, USA jumps 5. If they jump 7, they jump 7, blah, blah, blah. And so the strategy or the tactic or the logic here has to be, you have to stretch, what I call stretching. It's when you choose a weight that is heavy enough, that is light enough that you can do it, but it forces the opponent to take a weight that they can't. If you remember, or if you see here, Aurelie's second was 177.5. And we see a third attempt deadlift of 185. So a 7.5 kilo jump. And you'll see that that was good, and there was a little bit left there. And so seeing this 7.5 kilo jump, if you're following and doing the math, you will know that Heather Connor also jumped 7.5 kilos. They jumped from 192.5 to 200 kilos. And so Heather comes out for 200 kilos, which is a world record. By the way, the world record before this session was 185. And this is to take bronze, to snatch the bronze out of the hands of Team Canada. And it is what I would call an RP10, not much left in that. And she just gets it. And so even though she only went 1 out of 3 on squats, I love this reaction, she ends up taking bronze on the podium. And so if we check out the final placings, am I looking at the final placings? I am. You'll see that Heather Connor 407 and Aurelie also on 407. Had Aurelie done, say, for example, 187.5, like let's say they jumped 10, then Heather Connor would have had to jump 10. Maybe that would have been too much for Heather Connor to take. So in hindsight, clearly a mistake. At the time, like I'm going to say almost impossible to get this exactly right. Because again, if you push too hard, maybe you fail and you're stuck in that position anyway. And I have to agree with Team Canada's decision making actually, because when your opponent is a sumo deadlifter, sumo tends to be quite volatile. And so taking a weight that's relatively safe, like Team Canada did, says, all right, I know you're strong enough to do 200 kilos, Heather, but go and do it. It puts the ball back in their court and says, yes, you can do it, but being able to do it is very different from actually doing it. And so you're kind of forcing their hand and saying, you've got to do it, as opposed to taking a weight that's risky and you end up failing. And then it makes it easy for them because they don't need to do anything. They can even skip their third attempt and they outplace you. So a very competitive 47 class, kind of like the men's 59. Usually these lighter classes tend to be a little bit less deep, but you've got 5 lifters here on 400 kilo totals. So it was an awesome session. I will say that afterwards on Instagram, if you follow Aurelie, she ended up deadlifting 190 in the warm-up room. So objectively, there was 5 kilos left there. And if she'd done that 5 kilos, like if she deadlifted the 190, dare I say, I don't think Heather Connor could have done a 205 kilo deadlift and she would have been a bronze medalist at an open worlds. But that's what sport's for, is you've got to go out there and do it. Whew. Okay, let's check out the next session, which was the 52 kilo class in the women's. Like I said, very big day of lifting. Kind of like in the 47 class. Oh, and of course, recapping those final results. Tiffany in first place, Jess Espinal in second place, and Heather Connor in third place. So very good competitive day of lifting. Oh, and one thing actually, before I do jump on to the 52 class, Tiffany Chapon totaled 424.5. And if you remember earlier, I said that the world record total is 428.5, which is 4 kilos more than this. Yet she went for a 5 kilo jump on deadlift. From 167, she went to 172.5. And kind of like what I said before about the, what was it? The attempt selection earlier. Oh yeah, the squats for Tiffany. I was surprised that she would even bother doing that, because you're just pushing up the record total higher, making it harder for you to score well at the Sheffield next year. So yeah, I don't know what the logic is there. I don't have a relationship with Tiffany, so I wouldn't be able to speak to her or her coach so obviously or so directly or so easily. But I'd be curious what the logic was there. Okay, on to the 52 kilo women. This session, again, was very exciting. We have Noémie Alibert, the French woman who is the reigning world champion. She won the world championships last year in the 52 class. And again, all eyes are on Evie Corrigan, the dark horse that won the Sheffield, the inaugural Sheffield. Big fan. Breaking the world record total and absolutely killing it. And interestingly, last year at the IPF Classic World Championships, Evie finished 4th in the 57s. Went down a weight class for Sheffield, as we've all realized, suits her perfectly, and is now staying in that class and is now at the World Championships to, I believe, take potentially her first World Championships. We have another New Zealander in the mix, as well as a Dutch woman in Pleon and a Serbian in Alexandra. So you'll have to excuse me. So first and second look very far ahead, I suppose you could say, but the battle for third is going to be interesting. So let's take a look at what happened. This only finished half an hour ago. Let's have a look here. Okay, Noémie, opening squat 162.5 kilos. Like I said, reigning world champion. Takes this opening squat and surprisingly gets red lights. No good. 2-1 on depth, which when you are in a competitive fight for first with Evie, you can't afford to miss lifts. I think that's very well understood. Even on openers, you can't afford to miss them because they just slow you down. It puts you into positions of having to make hard decisions. Similarly, the Serbian missed her opener squat of 145, jumped 7.5 kilos to 150 kilos, and takes 152 kilos for a second attempt on the border of, well, not on the border of, but having not done a successful lift yet, and also gets 2 red lights. So for the Serbian coming into the squats, the third round of squats, she hasn't got a good lift on the board. And she is a genuine contender for a podium placing. So again, very hard decisions. The Serbian made the choice to go up 7.5 kilos after the opener. The opener was missed on depth. Whereas Noémie decided to stay at 162. Now we're having a look at Alexandra, the Serbian's third attempt squat. She ends up getting it. Very easy. I mean, I'm sure she's thinking, why didn't I just do that in the first 2 attempts? And she gets 2 white lights on this one. So a tough session for the Serbian, but I mean, it was close. You can watch the replay. It was close in terms of depth. I think it was good, honestly. So yeah, maybe it's just a case of like adjusting on the day. We just don't know how the referee is going to adjudicate your lifts compared to what you've experienced in the past. Of course, all the other factors like traveling and all this kind of stuff. So she gets on the board with 152.5, repeating her second attempt. Evie Corrigan goes straight at 3 and she squats 162.5 kilos after opening at 155. So she has what I call a 7.5 kilo spread. So your spread is the gap between your opener and your second. She went 3 out of 3 and she went 155, 160, 162.5, which isn't something I would normally do. Like at these types of weights, I would expect to see something more like a 12 to 17.5 kilo spread. So very narrow spread. She likes the heavy openers or the small jumps or both. But I mean, it's obviously working for her because she's, Sheffield champion. And Noémie repeated her opener of 162.5 in the second round and got it. And she comes in for a third attempt of 170. And much like the opener, misses it on depth. But unfortunately, unlike the opener, you don't get a chance to retake it. And so here she's cost herself valuable kilos. Like her squat is objectively stronger than Evie's. I believe she has the world record squat actually. And she's gone 1 out of 3 and she's finished the squat section equal with Evie. So, and squat is Evie's weakest lift actually, relatively speaking. So pretty disappointing session for the French woman to go 1 out of 3. One lifter we haven't spoken about is the Dutch woman Pleus. I've just paused this at the worst time. She squatted 167.5 on the second attempt. This is her third attempt of 170. She comes 3/4 of the way up and just runs out of steam and gets no lift there. So she finishes on 2 out of 3 in the squats at 167.5. So you'll see these are the results here. You can have a glance while I kind of chat over them. But yeah, competitive round of squats, giving up valuable kilos. You got the gold medalist is Pleon with 167.5. Kind of a similar story in the 47 kilo women's, where Pleon and Megan Lai Smith from New Zealand both have the same squat and same body weight. But Pleon wins the gold because she did her 167 kilo squat in the second round, in the second attempt, whereas Megan Lai Smith did her 167.5 in the third round of squats. So 2 New Zealanders on the podium for squats. We'd love to see that. And Noemi, who is the world record squatter, I believe, finishing in 4th. Very unusual. You would not have expected that before the day started. And yeah, this puts the French woman in a very uncomfortable position, making it very hard to kind of keep up with the rest of the group. Where am I? Okay, moving on to bench. The bench was a pretty straightforward day. Pleus, the Dutch woman, went 3 out of 3. I believe I'm saying that right. Or is it Pleun? I may have forgotten this. She benches 90 kilos, really strong fight there. Evie, wait, where am I going? Oh, yeah. She benches 3 out of 3 with 90 kilos. Noemi benches 2 out of 3 and gets 87.5, missing 90. So again, you know, she's at the end of the squat bench section. She's on 3 out of 6, 2 squats and 1 bench. No, 1 squat and 2 benches, which is probably the worst way to do it. You'd rather 2 squats and 1 bench. But misses 2.5 kilos on bench, so she misses 90, stuck at 87.5. Meanwhile, Evie goes 3 out of 3 and benches this 100 kilos, which I believe is 2.5 more than she did at Sheffield. At Sheffield, she benched 97.5. And she did the same attempt selection at Sheffield. At Sheffield, she went 92.5, 95, 97.5. And here it was 95, 97.5, 100. So like I commented about in the squat, a very small spread, like the minimum spread you can possibly have, 5 kilos, when you go 3 out of 3. I mean, bench, you usually can get away with it. But again, I would expect more like 7.5 or 10 kilo spread here. So I'm not saying this is right or wrong. It's just an interesting observation from clearly one of the best athletes in the world at the moment. And one of the best, obviously, coaching groups at the moment, because they're doing great stuff with her. And so we can take a look at the placings leading. So these are the totals leading into the deadlift. So these are the subtotals, squats and bench press added. Now going into, so the medalists, I should probably comment on the bench press. Gold medal to Evie, unsurprisingly, with 100. Alexandra, the Serbian, ended up benching 97.5 for a silver medal. She went 3 out of 3. And the bronze medal actually went to Monica De La Torre from Mexico. She benched 95 kilos from Group B. So from the B group, she actually scored herself a medal, kind of like what Anna did in the squats of the 47 kilo class, scoring a medal from the B group. Doesn't happen so often, but yeah, awesome result there. Okay, going into deadlifts. These are the subtotals. Now, Evie's on 262. If Noemi was going to be a chance of beating Evie, she'd have to be much closer. The battle that they had at Sheffield was awesome because they were very evenly matched. But when, you know, 2 lifters are evenly matched, one of them goes 6 out of 6 and the other one goes 3 out of 6, I mean, it's no longer an evenly matched competition, unfortunately. It's just, you're just too far behind. If you miss 1 bench press, maybe it's not so bad. But yeah, missing 2 squats and a bench press, it's just too much kilos to give away to your opponent. So, I mean, if I was coaching Evie into this comp, I would have been like, yeah, you're sweet. We don't need to stress too much. Let's just nail lifts, err on the side of conservative, and let's take home the gold medal. Pleon, I should have said instead of Pleus, is on 257, equal with Megan Lai Smith of New Zealand. And so there's a bit of a battle here going on for 3rd and 4th. You'll see it shapes up really well. That said, it's pretty standard kind of stuff happens here. Megan Lai Smith takes 180 for her 3rd attempt deadlift. We actually haven't seen her yet in my little analysis. She takes 180. At the time of this lift, she was too far from 2nd. Noemi was lifting well, actually. She got a 2nd attempt deadlift of 195. So Megan Lai Smith was too far away from scoring a silver medal, and so opted for a relatively conservative attempt. Like her 2nd attempt deadlift was 175, as you can kind of see down here. And so they went to 180 to protect the bronze, essentially, to add a little bit more kilos, to make it harder for Alexandra and the rest to catch her. So you'll see that she gets this 180 deadlift and ends up being about the right attempt, maybe 2.5 kilos left. But when you're in that position and you're defending your placing from lifters that have to lift behind you, I always say you're better off like adding 5 kilos than trying to add 7 and missing, right? Adding 10 than trying 15 and missing. Because if you add those kilos, it's just so much more pressure. That lifter behind you has to now lift 5 kilos more than they were otherwise needing to lift. And so I think very good attempt selection again by Team New Zealand. And that kind of like wraps up the placings. Like the other lifters were just not able to make it. I believe Alexandra came out on her last deadlift for a personal record rather than trying to take third off Megan. Like Megan, basically, like Noemi of France had second place wrapped up. Megan had third place wrapped up. Alexandra from Serbia couldn't make it to third, was too far. So basically in his last few lifts, the results were fixed. And so we have Evie taking 203 kilos for a third attempt deadlift. Now with her second attempt deadlift of 197, she totaled 460 kilos, which is equal to the world record total, which is her world record. And if you remember what I commented on before, it makes very little sense to push the world record total because it makes your scoring worse at the subsequent Sheffield. Evie, unlike the rest of the women lifters, already has a ticket to Sheffield because she won Sheffield, and so she gets an automatic entry into the next one. So she knows she's going to be there. She knows she's going to compete at 52, and she knows that there's no reason to, make the world record total anymore. So this lift, I was like, why is she adding 5.5 kilos to the total? This is only going to come to bite her on the ass later. And in just absolute classy form, she comes out and actually doesn't even attempt a lift. You'll see in a moment. She walks out and just takes this minute to greet and thank the volunteers, the referees. I just think this was an awesome display of sportsmanship. Some sooks, honestly, are going to come and say, she wasted everyone's time, made the loaders load a weight that it wasn't even going to lift. But I think actually this is like the right thing to do. This is the classy thing to do because it gives you the following lifter a minute's rest. A very valuable minute because if you watch this, these are very quick sessions. There's 8 lifters in a group. The spotters are very fast. Deadlifts move very quickly. You're getting 5-6 minute rest between attempts. And so by taking this lift, putting the clock in, you can see the clock's running down. It forces the bar to get loaded. And so the subsequent lifter, the Singaporean lifter, gets her full minute rest. So that's actually a very, I think, wise and classy thing to do. And so the last lift of the day goes to the Singaporean, Farhana, who was the previous world record holder in this lift. And she comes in and takes the 203 kilo deadlift world record off Evie, who had it at 202.5 at Sheffield. So an awesome way to finish the day's lifting. I know that Evie would not be upset at all about this lift because, yeah, it was great. And great to see a challenger at the top end of the deadlifts in the 52 class. So to wrap up the 52 kilo class, Corrigan 460, Alever 450, Smith 437.5. So while it was a very competitive day's lifting, a lot of the results, I suppose, got decided essentially by first or even second round of deadlifts. And yeah, I mean, like, Noemi was never going to, not never, you can never say never, but was always going to be fighting with Evie for first place. But as soon as she missed those 2 squats, like at the end of round of squats, I was already thinking like, okay, there's no way she can win gold now. Like, unless Evie goes 1 out of 3 on bench and 1 out of 3 on deadlifts, there's just no way. And because you know, like from the New Zealand point of view, because you know you've got that, I suppose, advantage, you can actually err on the side of conservative. They didn't, but you could very easily do that. You could say like, well, we don't need to push now. We don't need to be super aggressive. I can just aim to bench 2.5 less than I want, and I can aim to deadlift 2.5 less than I want, and I can use that as a buffer and just, bank this win. And the battle for third was pretty close, but again, when Alexandra missed her missed 2 squats, that really cost her. Like, this 152.5 probably should have been a 157.5 or 160 kilo squat, which might have made the difference. But again, Megan Smith had a perfect day. I think she went 9 out of 9. All squats, all benches, all deadlifts. Yeah. So, I mean, kind of like I commented before, when your opponent goes 9 out of 9, it's very hard to do anything against them. Like, if you're equally matched, which I would say the Serbian and the New Zealander are very closely matched, when your opponent goes 9 out of 9, it's very hard to keep up with them. And yeah, 2 missed squats is just not going to cut it if you are fighting for a medal placing. So yeah, that's my wrap up of the day 1 of the Classic IPF World Championships. It was an awesome day of lifting. We had the lightweight starting the day. So a super quick summary: the 59 kilo men, First place was Voska from the United States in the 47 and a half kilo, 47 and a half. I'm so used to saying 7.5, 47 kilo class. We had the world champion in Tiffany Chapon, unsurprisingly, the Sheffield competitor. And in the 52 class, again, unsurprisingly, Evie Corrigan wins, is your new world champion. And I believe it's her first world championship, actually, her first win at the world championships. So awesome day. So yeah, that's my wrap up. I hope that's all made sense. I know it's a lot of information. I know it was a lot to take on. But I do hope that, let's see if I can do this. I do hope that that was useful for you and you're able to kind of take something out of that. I would recommend you go and check out some of the lifters on social media, on Instagram and YouTube. You'll probably get a little bit more of a intimate look at some of these lifts. But what I wanted to do, like I said at the start, was provide just a general summary, a bit of an overview of what's happened, a bit of an analysis, a bit of a bit of questioning as to like, why did they take this and why didn't they push a record? Or like I said, if you didn't know any better, you wouldn't know why Evie didn't take that last deadlift, just walked out and shook hands rather than going for the world record. Or yeah, little things like that. So yeah, that's it from me. I hope you've enjoyed it and I will see you all tomorrow. Cheers.